I heard the gunshot before I felt the pain. 1 second I was reaching for my military ID, the next, I was slammed into the side of a rental car with my shoulder on fire and a stranger screaming the word "boy" in my face. Let me ask you something right at the start. How do you stay calm when the person with the gun and the badge suddenly decides your life is worth nothing? My name is Major Brady Wallace, United States Army, and this is the story of the night a racist cop tried to put me in my place and accidentally woke up the Pentagon instead. It started out as one of those quiet evenings that feel almost boring in the best way. I'd just left my sister Maya's place in downtown Charleston. Leftover food in a plastic container on the seat beside me. Suit jacket hanging neatly in the back. I had a big briefing at the Pentagon the next day. 15 years of service. 3 tours in Afghanistan, now working on strategic planning in D.C. And I was running through slides in my head while the jeeps dragged me through back streets I didn't recognize. Nothing fancy. Just a black guy in a rental car polo shirt, khakis, thinking about bullet points and not bullets. Then I saw the lights in my rearview mirror. Red and blue, way too close, way too aggressive. You know that feeling when your stomach drops before your brain even catches up? Yeah, that happened. I glanced down at the speedometer. 30 of exactly the limit. No rolling stop, no swerving, nothing. But those lights weren't a question. They were a command. I did exactly what the Army trained me to do. Signal pull over, engine, off both hands on the wheel where everyone can see them. I've done that dance in uniform, out of uniform, on base and off. Be respectful. Follow commands, no sudden movements. As a black man in America, who also wears a uniform, you learn 2 sets of rules. The ones in the UCMJ and the ones nobody writes down but you ignore at your own risk. The door of the patrol car slammed hard behind me, way harder than it needed to. I could see him in the side mirror as he walked up hand, already resting on his gun, like we were in some kind of action movie, and I was the villain of the week. Later, I'd learn his name was Officer Quentin Fisher, 12-year veteran of Charleston PD. In that moment, he was just a silhouette with too much swagger and not enough restraint. "License and registration," he barked before he even really looked at me. I kept my eyes forward, voice steady. "Yes, sir. My license is in my wallet on my right hip, and the rental agreement is in the glove compartment. I'm going to move slowly, all right?" I hadn't even finished the sentence when he leaned down enough for the streetlight to catch my face. I saw it. That tiny tightening around the eyes, the quick flicker of recognition that had nothing to do with me personally, and everything to do with what he thought I was. Black male alone in a decent car, in a neighborhood he probably thought I didn't belong in. And just like that, the temperature dropped. "Step out of the vehicle," he snapped. "Officer, may I ask why I kept my tone polite, professional, the way I speak in briefings to colonels and generals? I wasn't speeding, and I've obeyed all traffic laws." He hated that. I saw the jaw clench, the little flare of anger when someone like me uses full sentences and calm logic. I said, "Get out. Now." That was the moment I knew this wasn't about a broken taillight or a rolling stop. This was about control. About putting me back into whatever box he thought I was supposed to fit in. Here's the part you don't see in viral videos. While all of this was happening, my phone was sitting in the dashboard mount, still connected to a secure military line from an earlier call. That particular app, the one we use for sensitive communications, is designed to stay live through almost anything. Dropped connections, power issues, sudden interruptions. It just holds on. So while I stepped out of the car, moved slowly, like I'd been trained, placed my hands on the hood when he ordered me to, that line stayed open. And every word that racist cop said, every hit he landed, every threat that came out of his mouth, was being piped straight into the Pentagon in real time. I didn't know that yet. All I knew in that moment was the feel of warm metal under my palms, the way my shoulder muscles tensed automatically, and the way he stepped up behind me, like he'd done this 1,000 times, and never paid a price for it. "Turn around, hands on the hood," he said, voice tighter, harsher. He moved closer, breath hot with stale coffee and old anger. "What's your problem, boy, you deaf?" That word hit harder than the baton did later. Boy. I grew up in rural Alabama. I've heard that word since I was old enough to walk into a corner store on my own. I heard it from good old boys in pickup trucks, from drunk guys outside bars, when I was still underage, from a couple of soldiers early in my career, who thought my rank was a clerical error. I worked my whole life to prove I was more than that word, but some people, when they look at you, that's all they let themselves see. "Sir," I said, keeping my voice even. "I am a major in the United States Army. My military ID is in my wallet, if you'd like to see it." He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound that cut through the quiet street. "Sure you are, boy. And I'm the damn Secretary of Defense." Behind us, the neighborhood was silent. A porch light on across the street, a TV flickering behind a curtain, but no one coming outside. People learn. You hear shouting and see police lights, you keep your head down. You don't want to be next. While he's mocking my rank, my phone is streaming all of it to a windowless room in the Pentagon, where a staff sergeant named Maria Santos is watching her screen flash red and thinking, "What the hell am I listening to?" But again, I only learned her name, and that part of the story later. Back on that street, he was searching my pockets without cause, pushing harder than he needed to, fighting with the idea that I was staying calm. You want to see someone like that lose their mind? Don't give them the panic they're trying to provoke. Stay professional. It drives them crazy. "I think you're just another punk trying to talk his way out of trouble," he said, punctuating the sentence with his baton, slamming across my upper back. White pain exploded through my shoulders. I grunted, but didn't cry out. Combat teaches you how to swallow pain, in the moment how to make your body respond, before your brain has time to scream. "Officer, I am not resisting," I said, breath strained but controlled. "I am a United States Army major, and I respectfully request you contact my commanding officer." Another hit, this time across my shoulders. "Army major, huh? You're nothing but another black thug trying to run a con. You think that uniform changes what you are." Back at the Pentagon, Morrison was listening now. Colonel Patricia Morrison, 25 years in zero tolerance for anyone hurting her soldiers. In her world, assaulting a federal employee isn't a bad decision. It's a declaration of war. In ours on that quiet street, he finally found my wallet. He yanked it out like he'd just won a prize, and flipped it open, probably expecting some fake ID, maybe a card, borrowed from a friend. Instead, he was staring at the real thing. Brady Wallace, Major, United States Army. Assignment, Pentagon Strategic Planning Division. Security clearance. Top secret. His hand froze for half a second. I felt it even with my face turned toward the car. That's the moment most people imagine is the happy ending, right? Officer sees the ID, realizes he's made a mistake, backs down, maybe even apologizes. That's not what happened. If anything, that little card made him even angrier. Now, I wasn't just some black guy he could push around and forget. I was a black man who'd made it into a world he'd never be allowed into. Rank clearance connections he'd never have. I could feel the resentment rolling off him. "Well, well," he whispered. Voice suddenly colder. "Look what we got here. A real live military officer. You think this little card makes you special? You think this gives you the right to disrespect me, officer?" I said, still facing the car, hands on the hood. "I've shown you nothing but respect. I've followed your commands. I've identified myself properly. I'm asking you as one professional to another, let me contact my commanding officer." He stepped back, And for a second, I really thought maybe reason had landed. That's the cruel part. That small moment of hope before the drop. Then I heard the click of his holster. "You know what your problem is, Major," he said as he drew his service pistol. "You forgot what you are. You forgot where you come from. You think that uniform, that rank, that fancy education changes what I see. When I look at you, every part of my training screamed at me to move, to find cover, to treat this as the combat situation it had become. But I was standing on an American street facing an American police officer, and I knew that if I ran, his report would write itself." He lunged. He reached for something I feared for my life. "Officer Fisher," I said. I could finally see his name tag reflected faintly in the glass. "I am unarmed. I am not threatening you. There is no justification for drawing your weapon." He laughed this wild, bitter sound. "Justification. I don't need justification. I am the justification. When I say you're a threat, you're a threat. If it were you, what would you have done in that moment? Reach for the ID and hope the audio saved your life later. Refuse and hope he didn't shoot you out of pure spite." He raised the gun and aimed at my chest. "You want to show me that ID again? Major, reach for it. Reach for your wallet, real slow." There it was. The setup. The trap he'd probably run before on people with no Pentagon line, no military training. Nobody in a dark room 3,000 miles away, listening in real time. I made my choice. "Officer," I said quietly, hands still flat on the hood. My hands are visible. I am not reaching for anything. I am not moving. You are being recorded." He laughed again. "Recorded by who?" "Your imaginary army friends. Your pretend commanding officer." And that's when he got his answer. My phone, still connected, crackled, and a new voice cut through the air. Calm, professional, absolutely in charge. "Officer Fisher, this is Colonel Patricia Morrison, United States Army. You are currently assaulting a federal employee while under active surveillance by military intelligence. I am ordering you to holster your weapon and step away from Major Wallace immediately." For the first time since he walked up to my car, I felt him hesitate. Just for a second. He looked around trying to figure out where the voice was coming from, how they knew his name, how they knew what was happening. "This is Colonel Morrison." The voice continued loud enough for both of us to hear clearly. "Major Wallace's communication device has been transmitting this entire encounter to Pentagon security. Every word you have spoken, every action you have taken, has been recorded and is being reviewed by federal authorities. You are currently in violation of multiple federal statutes." He could have backed down. He could have holstered his weapon. Stepped away, maybe still faced charges, but at least not added attempted murder to the list. Instead, he made the choice that would destroy his life. "I don't care who you are," he shouted at the phone. "I don't care about your Pentagon, your military, your federal this and that. This is my jurisdiction, my street, my rules." Then he pulled the trigger. The impact felt like someone had swung a sledgehammer into my shoulder. The sound of the shot was weirdly muffled, like I was underwater. My knees buckled, my chest spasmed, my hand slid off the hood, and I went sideways into the car, leaving a smear of blood across the white paint. It's funny what you remember. The smell of burned powder, the taste of metal in your mouth, the way your own voice sounds when you realize you're screaming. Everything went fuzzy around the edges. Somewhere in that sea of noise, I heard him say almost conversationally, "You want him back? Come and get him." 3,000 miles away in that windowless room, that gunshot cracked through speakers and into the ears of people who had spent their careers protecting soldiers from foreign enemies, and were now listening live as one of their own was shot by someone sworn to protect and serve. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. From here, I only know parts of it because they let me hear the recordings later. While I was bleeding on the pavement trying to stay conscious, that quiet Pentagon space turned into controlled chaos. Red lights lit up across a wall of screens. General William Hayes, 3 stars on his uniform, decades of command, walked into the Situation Room, listened to maybe 10 seconds of Fisher talking about your boy here, and said, "This is now a federal incident. I want every asset we have focused on Charleston, South Carolina." They pulled Fisher's record in minutes. 17 shootings, all ruled justified. 23 excessive force complaints, all unfounded. A stack of civil rights investigations that never went anywhere. And then the kicker. His social media full of white nationalist garbage, anti-military rants, jokes about teaching soldiers their place. Back on the street, I was still there, conscious, but fading in and out, feeling the blood spreading warm and sticky across my chest. At some point, I heard sirens, saw red and white reflections dancing off the car. "Officer, we need to get to the victim," a paramedic's voice said, frustrated and urgent. "Nobody moves until I say so." Fisher snapped. "This is still my scene. Think about that for a second. A man with a gun who just shot an unarmed federal employee standing over him, blocking medical care, while arguing with the Pentagon and the FBI in real time. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's justice? It took federal agents rolling up weapons drawn before anyone could get to me. I was drifting when I heard it. A woman's voice, firm and clear. "Quentin Fisher, FBI. Put the weapon down and step away from the victim. You are under arrest for assault on a federal employee and civil rights violations." Later, I'd learn her name. Special Agent Sarah Chen. But in that moment, she was just the voice tearing through the nightmare and making space for the paramedics to finally kneel beside me. They got a line into my arm pressure on my shoulder oxygen over my face. I remember one voice close to my ear saying, "Major Wallace, you're going to be all right. Stay with us. The Army's got you." I clung to that sentence like a rope thrown into deep water. Then hospital lights, beeping machines, blurred faces, anesthesia, darkness. When I woke up properly, it was to the soft hum of monitors and the smell of antiseptic. My shoulder felt like someone had parked a truck on it, but I was alive. A woman in a white coat stepped into my field of vision. Dark hair pulled back, eyes sharp but kind. "Good morning, Major Wallace," she said. "I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez. In case you're wondering, you're still in Charleston. And yes, I'm the person who dug the bullet out of your shoulder." I managed to smile. Did I at least keep the shirt? It was new. She laughed softly. "Afraid not. The bullet went through missed major arteries and nerves, which is why I'm here chatting with you instead of having a very different conversation with your family. You got lucky." I lay there for a minute, letting that word settle. Lucky. Shot on an American street by an American cop, and still somehow lucky. Then another figure appeared in the doorway. This one in a dark suit badge at her hip. Asian American, late 30s, maybe tired eyes that had seen too much, but were still very much awake. "Major Wallace," she said, stepping in. "I'm Special Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI. If you're up to it, I need to talk to you about what happened last night." I looked from her to the doctor. "Is this one of those, the good news is you're alive, the bad news is your life just blew up conversations?" "Pretty much," Chen said. And for the first time since the shooting, I laughed for real. Once Dr. Rodriguez checked, I could handle it. Agent Chen pulled a chair closer to the bed and set a tablet in her lap. First she said, "You need to know something. You were never alone out there. Your phone stayed connected to a secure Pentagon line the entire time. They heard everything. The Army, the Pentagon, DOJ, all of them got pulled into this in real time." I heard a voice, I said slowly. Memory coming back in painful flashes. Female, called herself Colonel Morrison. I thought I was hallucinating. "She was very real," Chen said, "and very angry. Fisher is in federal custody. General Hayes has personally made sure this isn't getting swept under any rug. So that's it? I asked. Still half dazed. He gets charged. There's a trial, maybe a settlement, maybe some reforms. We all move on and hope the next one gets caught too. She hesitated, and that pause told me everything. I'm afraid it's not that simple, she said. Major Fisher wasn't just some random racist cop having a bad night. We think he's part of something a lot bigger. Twist number 1. She turned the tablet toward him, showing a grid of photos. Black men. Latino men. 1. Black woman in navy dress blues. Under each picture were dates, short notes, incident numbers. These are just a few of the people Fisher interacted with over the last 18 months, she said. Sergeant Marcus Thompson, Army National Guard, broke his wrist in a resisting arrest takedown. Charges dropped, complaint filed. Nothing happened. Petty Officer Lisa Rodriguez, Navy Intelligence, pulled over 3 times in 2 weeks, accused of drug trafficking. Nothing in the car but her security clearance got tangled up for months. I stared at the faces, feeling something cold settle in my chest. They're all military, I said. All of them. Active duty or veterans, she confirmed. Mostly men of color. Here's the part that should scare you. Fisher knew their service status. He wasn't guessing. We believe someone with access to VA and military-adjacent databases was feeding him names and addresses. She tapped to another file, a pale guy with buzz cut and an old photo in uniform. Dennis Murphy, former military police discharged for disciplinary reasons. Took a job doing IT work for a VA contractor. We've got logs showing he accessed files he had no reason to look at. And we've got money transfers that line up with those accesses. So I wasn't just some random stop, I said quietly. He knew who I was. Not all of it, she said. But he knew enough. Rank race, maybe your recent travel. We're still piecing it together. If it were you, how would it feel to realize you weren't unlucky? You were hunted. I lay there, the hospital room suddenly too small. How many of us, I asked. How many people in uniform has he done this to? We're still counting, she said. And that's where you come in, Major. The Pentagon and DOJ want to set up a joint task force. We need someone who understands both worlds, military culture and the reality of being a black man dealing with law enforcement. They're asking if you'd serve as a military liaison to the investigation. Fresh out of surgery, I asked, raising an eyebrow. She smiled faintly. Not today, but soon. After you recover. We can't force you. We just thought, after what you've been through, you might want a say in what happens next. Agent Chen, I said, feeling my voice steady, even as my body still shook. He shot me because I wear this uniform, and because I look the way I look. He attacked all of us. So yeah, I want in. It moved fast after that. Faster than I expected. Within days, I was sitting in a secure conference room, arm in a sling, while Agent Chen walked me through evidence that felt less like a police misconduct case and more like the briefing for a counter-terrorism operation. On one wall, there was a massive chart. Photos, lines, dates, departments across 6 different states. Not just Fisher. Dozens of officers, all with similar patterns. Excessive force complaints, military-connected victims. At first we thought this was just Fisher, and maybe a couple of buddies, she said. Then we saw this. At the top of the board was a name and a face I didn't recognize. White guy in his 50s, gray at the temples, dress blues in his official portrait. Colonel Richard Steele, she said. Former Army Intelligence. Dishonorably discharged in 2019 for embezzlement and conduct unbecoming. We believe he's the architect of what we're looking at. And what exactly are we looking at? I asked, even though part of me already knew. She took a breath. A domestic terrorist network, embedded inside law enforcement. They call themselves the Shield Brotherhood. That was the twist that knocked the wind out of me. She walked me through it. After his disgrace, Steele had set up a tactical consulting company offering training to police departments. Real training on the surface, active shooter drills, tactical entry, that kind of thing. But at those seminars, after hours in private chats, he started recruiting. He looked for officers who already felt resentful about federal oversight, about changing demographics, about the military getting more respect than they thought cops did. He fed them conspiracy theories, framed the modern military as compromised and politicized, painted service members, especially Black and Latino ones, as potential internal enemies. They created encrypted channels where they shared war stories about putting veterans in their place. They tracked military personnel in their jurisdictions. They celebrated injuries like mine. This wasn't abuse by accident. It was a campaign. And then there were the bank records. Most of these guys aren't rich, Agent Chen said. But we found crypto wallets linked to several key players. Whoever's funding this is moving serious money. Who, I asked. Some billionaire with a death wish. She turned her laptop screen toward me so I could see a series of transaction logs. We've traced several transfers to accounts already flagged by Intel for links to Russian security services. It's not just racism and anger. We're looking at foreign-sponsored domestic terrorism. Let me pause and ask you this. When you think about threats to the military, what comes to mind? Foreign armies, insurgent groups. Maybe cyber attacks, right? Did you ever picture someone in an American police uniform, paid by a foreign government, hunting American soldiers on American streets? Because that's what we were staring at. The response, once the full picture came into focus, was like watching a machine you'd only read about suddenly come to life. DOJ, the FBI, the Army, even NSA. All of them started moving in sync. RICO charges terrorism statutes coordination with federal judges for warrants. And me, this guy who almost died in a rental car, sitting at the table helping them think like the people who wanted us dead. The first time I saw Fisher again was at his arraignment. They brought me into the federal courthouse in Charleston, in an armored vehicle, marshals everywhere, snipers on rooftops. It felt like heading into a combat zone more than a courthouse. Inside, the air was thick. Military uniforms, suits, press badges all crammed into one room. They sat me in the front row just behind the government's table, my sling visible, my uniform crisp. I could feel Fisher's eyes on me before I even looked his way. He looked smaller in the orange jumpsuit, but the hatred was the same. When the judge asked for his plea, he stood up, looked straight at me and said, "Not guilty, Your Honor. Not guilty." U.S. Attorney Margaret Torres laid out the initial charges: assault on a federal employee, civil rights violations, conspiracy. She hinted at more to come at an ongoing investigation. The judge kept bail sky high. Fisher went back into custody, and I walked out of that courtroom knowing this story was far from over. The real tipping point came a few days later back at the FBI field office. Agent Chen called me into a conference room, that same evidence wall I'd seen before, now busier, messier, more terrifying. "We've identified 47 law enforcement officers across 6 states, she said. "They're all part of the Shield Brotherhood." Fisher was just one cell leader. She pointed to different clusters on the board. Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, South Carolina. Each little cluster was a node of something much uglier than one man with a badge and a gun and a chip on his shoulder. "We're planning coordinated raids," she continued. "All at once, 47 arrests, dozens of locations. And one more thing, Steele." She zoomed in on a satellite image of a compound out in the countryside. Fencing multiple buildings, cleared lines of sight. Former military training facility he bought through shell companies. "We believe it's his headquarters." "Looks like a forward operating base," I said. Exactly why we need your help, she replied. He's thinking like an intelligence officer. We need another one on our side. I didn't sleep much the night before the raids. How could I? The idea that we were about to take down the biggest domestic terrorist network targeting soldiers in American history, and I was going to be in the command vehicle for the main strike. It was a lot. Dawn came gray and heavy, the kind of sky that makes everything feel more serious. I sat in an armored SUV outside Steele's compound, tablet in my lap, showing drone feeds and positioning of FBI SWAT and Federal Marshals comms in my ear. All teams in position, Agent Rivera, the tactical commander, said over the net. On my count, 3, 2, 1, go. Across 6 states, doors went down at the same time. 45 of the 47 targets were in custody within minutes. Surprised at home at side gigs, even one at a gym. No time to coordinate, no time to trigger Protocol 7, whatever that was. Steele, though, was different. Drone footage showed movement in the main communications building of the compound. Heat signatures flashes that looked like equipment being smashed or burned. Steele is in the comms center, Chen said. We think he's destroying evidence. I watched the feed, my heart pounding. He's not trying to escape, I said. He knows he's not getting out of there. He's trying to protect his network. We ringed the building with tactical teams. EOD flagged suspicious shapes near windows, likely explosives. It was a classic last stand setup. Then Steele's voice came over the compound's loudspeakers, distorted but unmistakably confident. Major Brady Wallace, he called. I know you're out there. You think you've won something. Rivera handed me a radio. He wants you, he said. Let's see if you can keep him busy. I took a breath and keyed the mic. Colonel Richard Steele. This is Major Brady Wallace, United States Army. You're surrounded. Your people are in custody. This is over. He laughed, that brittle sound you hear from people who've burned every bridge and decided it was worth it. You really believe that? You think arresting a few cops stops what we've started? The Shield Brotherhood is bigger than you, bigger than your Pentagon, bigger than your little trial. Colonel, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. I've seen the files. I know about your funding. I know about your training camps. You took an oath once to protect this country. You remember that. Don't let this be how your story ends. Honor. He spit the word out. You want to talk about honor? I watched the military twist itself into a social experiment. Watched people who don't share our values get promoted and celebrated. I did what needed to be done. By murdering American soldiers, I asked. By having officers pull over Staff Sergeant Jerome Williams for a bogus traffic stop and shooting him dead on the side of the road, so you could call it justified. That's what you call protecting this country. Silence for a second. Then quietly, Jerome was a traitor. I thought about his widow, the video I'd watched of her testifying about the night her husband left for a short drive and never came home. I thought about the flag they'd folded and handed her, not knowing it had been earned twice, once in combat overseas, once in his final moments on an American street. Around us, agents moved into position. EOD specialists checked lines. Snipers watched windows. Cyber units jammed outgoing signals, trying to keep him from triggering anything remotely. Colonel, I said, any hope you had of winning died the second you aimed your people at us. The second you let foreign money into this. You're not a patriot. You're a contractor for enemies who want to see us tear each other apart, maybe he said. Or maybe I'm the only one who sees clearly what you've become. Either way, I won't be taken alive. And Protocol 7 is already in motion. Protocol 7, I asked. Glancing at Chen, she was already on her headset. Warning field offices, flagging military installations. We didn't know yet whether Protocol 7 meant coordinated attacks, data wipes, assassinations, or all of the above. Rivera's voice crackled in my ear. We can't wait any longer. All teams prepare to breach. Steele, I said into the mic. This is your last chance. Come out. Surrender. Help us undo the damage you've done. Help us protect the soldiers you pretended to care about. His voice came back colder, final. The Shield Brotherhood never surrenders. The next sound was the explosion. The whole comms building erupted fire and debris blasting outward. The SUV rocked dust and smoke rolling past the windows. I ducked instinctively, even though I was in no real danger where I sat. It's hard to turn off that kind of reflex. Status Rivera demanded over the net. One by one, the teams checked in. Minor injuries from debris, some singed gear, but no federal casualties. Steele had blown himself up, but he'd triggered too soon before we were inside. We'd lost whatever was left in that room, though. Hard drives, paper files, maybe maps of other cells. For a moment, my stomach sank. Had he just erased the only proof of how deep this thing ran? Chen was already on the phone to DC, speaking fast. When she hung up, she turned to me. Major, she said, we're okay. NSA has been intercepting and mirroring their communications and traffic for months. Steele just burned his local copies. He didn't scratch the big picture. That was the second twist. He thought he was protecting his brothers in arms. In reality, he'd locked in their fates the moment he decided to use modern tools to coordinate old hatred. In the weeks that followed, everything moved into a different arena. The courtroom. My hospital stay turned into physical therapy, which turned into suit fittings and witness prep. I still woke up some nights hearing the words, "reach for it," in my head. But now, there was a different endpoint waiting for me. 6 months after the shooting, I sat in a federal courtroom again. This time in full dress uniform. Ribbons and medals on display. Sling gone, but scar still throbbing in bad weather. Fisher sat at the defense table, orange jumpsuit, replaced by a suit that didn't quite fit shackles, hidden under the table flanked by lawyers, who weren't nearly as confident as he'd once been on that dark street. Major Wallace, U.S. Attorney Torres said, "Please tell the jury what happened on the night of March 15th. So I did. I told them about the rental car, my sister's cooking on the seat. The lights in the mirror, the tone of his voice before he even saw my face. I told them about the word boy, about the baton across my shoulders, about the moment my military ID made him angrier instead of calmer. I told them about Colonel Morrison's voice coming through my phone, about the choice not to move, and about the sound of that gun going off anyway. I told them about waking up in the hospital and learning I wasn't the first, just the first one, whose phone happened to be connected to the Pentagon when the trigger got pulled. During cross-examination, Fisher's attorney tried the usual lines. Split-second decisions. Dangerous situations. The fog of war applied to a quiet Charleston street. Major Wallace. He said, "Isn't it true that Officer Fisher was following training protocols and made a rapid decision under perceived threat?" "No, sir," I replied, keeping my voice level. "No training protocol I've ever seen teaches you to call someone racial slurs, beat them with a baton. While they're complying, ignore their identification and shoot them when they refuse to fall into your trap. That's not training. That's terrorism. Do you think that's too strong a word? Terrorism. Or is it finally the right one? One by one, the other pieces of the puzzle came out at trial. Agent Chen walked the jury through the Shield Brotherhood. Chats the encrypted channels, the crypto wallets. Dr. Freeman explained the radicalization process, how foreign intelligence services amplified anger and prejudice and turned them into operational plans. Then came the part I dreaded and needed in equal measure: the victims' families. Mrs. Williams' Staff Sergeant Jerome Williams' widow took the stand. She talked about his service, about the night he was pulled over on what should have been a 5-minute drive, about how she found out he was dead hours later. She looked over at Michael Torres, the officer who pulled the trigger in his case, and asked him directly, "Did you feel like a hero when you shot my husband?" He couldn't answer. By the time verdicts were read, the whole country was watching. It wasn't just about me anymore, or about Charleston, or even about the Shield Brotherhood. It was about whether America was finally willing to call an attack on its soldiers what it really was, even when the attackers wore badges instead of foreign uniforms. One by one, the jury foreperson read guilty. Conspiracy to commit acts of terror, civil rights violations under color of law, assault and murder of federal employees. In Fisher's case, the judge added her own commentary at sentencing. Mr. Fisher Judge Williams said you had every opportunity to walk away from hatred and violence. You chose instead to embrace them, and to do so with the authority of the state behind you. This court will show you a measure of accountability you refuse to show your victims. Life. No parole. Same for the network leaders who'd lived long enough to see the inside of that courtroom. Afterward, outside the courthouse, there were microphones and cameras, and more attention than I ever wanted. But I understood what it meant, so I stepped up. 6 months ago, I said a man with a badge and a gun looked at me and decided my life didn't matter. Today, he and his co-conspirators learned that every soldier's life matters enough for this country to fight back. Not with bullets and bombs, but with evidence and justice. And still, even with all of that, even with the Shield Brotherhood dismantled and foreign involvement exposed and reforms rolling out across the country, the questions don't go away. Now I work in a brand new office at the Pentagon, Director of Military Personnel Protection. My job is to make sure what happened to me, what happened to Jerome Williams, and so many others, doesn't happen again. We're changing how we share data, how we monitor threats, how we train both soldiers and cops to recognize when something's wrong. But on quiet nights when the building is half empty and the cleaning crews are making their rounds, I sometimes sit there and stare at a folded flag on my bookshelf, the one Mrs. Williams pressed into my hands at a memorial, saying Jerome would want this to keep protecting people. And I think about the questions that still don't have easy answers. How do you rebuild trust between military personnel and law enforcement when you've seen just how deep the betrayal can go? How do you tell a young black soldier to call 911 if he's in trouble? Off base, knowing there are still people out there who might see his uniform as a target instead of armor. How do we balance acknowledging foreign influence with taking responsibility for the hate that was already here waiting to be weaponized? So let me turn it back to you. If it were you, pulled over on that street, would you have reached for the wallet? Would you trust that camera phones and secure lines can protect you? Or would you do whatever it takes just to get out alive, even if it meant swallowing your dignity one more time? Do you think what happened to Fisher and his crew is enough? Or do you think we're just scratching the surface of something much bigger and uglier? I've told you my story, the worst night of my life, and everything that came after the way one bullet turned into the biggest domestic terrorism case against cops the country has ever seen. Now, I want to hear yours. Tell me in the comments what you think. Do you still trust the badge? Have you ever been in a situation where someone with authority abused it, and you had to decide whether to speak up or stay silent? Do you think foreign governments are really involved? Or is that just an easy excuse for our own failures? Drop your thoughts, your anger, your hope, your own experiences below. Argue with me if you want. Agree, disagree. Tell me I'm too harsh or not harsh enough. Because as long as we're talking about it, as long as we're not pretending everything is fine, there's still a chance we can make sure the next black soldier driving home from his sister's house doesn't have to learn the hard way who really has power in this country. And if stories like this matter to you, if you think these conversations are worth having, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Not for me, for the next person who finds those red and blue lights in their rearview mirror and has to decide in a split second how much their life is worth. I'm Major Brady Wallace. I survived that night. Not everyone did. Now it's your turn. What do you think we should do about that?